All right, so you know that story, the one that kind of makes you squirm a little, even if you've heard it 100 times?
Oh, you mean Abraham and Isaac?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It's, well, it's intense. And today we are going deep. We've got these excerpts from a podcast called Abraham's Test of Faith. And let me tell you.
This is one of those stories everyone thinks they know.
Exactly.
But there's so much more going on beneath the surface.
Totally. So Genesis 22, right? It's like this very action-packed play-by-play, but we don't get a lot of inner thoughts from the characters. But these excerpts, they really make you think about what's going on in their heads.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so picture this. God tells Abraham to take Isaac, his son, his only son, the one he loves, to this place, Moriah, and offer him up as a burnt offering.
Yeah, no big deal.
Right. I mean, talk about a gut punch of a request.
Yeah, and for Abraham, this wasn't just some order from on high, you know? This
Yes.
was deeply personal, agonizing even. This is the son that he waited 100 years for.
100 years. And yet, one of the things the excerpts highlight is just how immediately Abraham obeys. It says he got up early the next morning and went, no arguing, no trying to bargain,
Yeah.
just obedience.
Right, that's some serious trust.
Serious trust. I mean, it really makes you think, what does true surrender really look like? Because Abraham didn't fully understand, but his faith was just unwavering. I don't know about you, but I'd be struggling with that level of uncertainty. What about you?
Oh, absolutely. Most of us would, I think. It really makes you think about those moments in your own life when you're asked to take a leap of faith.
Right.
And maybe not sacrifice your kid level.
Thankfully not.
Right, but those moments where you just have to decide, do I trust what's happening or do I give in to that doubt?
Yeah, and so often those choices, we're making them with very limited information, right? It's like the servants in this story, they're kind of kept in the dark.
Yeah.
They know something huge is going on, but they don't know the specifics. It's like when you can sense something major happening, but you're on the outside looking in.
Right.
You overhear those whispered conversations, the tension,
Exactly.
but you just don't have the full picture. Drives me crazy.
But, you know, even in those moments of witnessing someone else's struggle, even without fully understanding it, there's a certain power in that, don't you think?
Yeah, you're right.
It reminds us that everyone has their own battles, their own burdens, and sometimes the best thing we can offer is just our presence, even if it's silent support.
That's so true. Sometimes empathy and compassion mean more than having all the answers.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, can we talk about Isaac for a second?
Sure.
Because one of the things the excerpts point out is that Isaac had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. He's just innocent in all of this.
It's heartbreaking, honestly. I mean, he even asks his dad, you know, hey, we've got the wood, we've got the fire, but where's the lamb? Where's the lamb for the offering?
Right. Imagine being that innocent, completely unaware of what's about to
I know, right?
go down.
Yeah.
And the way Abraham answers him, God will provide himself a lamb. I get chills every time.
It's such a loaded statement, isn't it?
So loaded. On the one hand, it's this incredible declaration of faith, but it's also, there are layers to it, right? Like, is he trying to shield Isaac from the truth? Is he trying to convince himself that it's all going to be okay?
It's this perfect storm of love and terror in one sentence.
Yes.
And we never really talk about that, do we?
Right.
We focus on Abraham's obedience, which is important, but what about that emotional turmoil that must have been going on inside of him?
Exactly. And speaking of emotional turmoil, what about Sarah? She's totally absent from this part of the story, but you know she's a presence, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The worry, the fear, the potential panic.
It's so easy to forget about those perspectives that aren't explicitly spelled out for us, especially hers. But that silence, to me, it speaks volumes about the strength that women, especially back then, often had to find within themselves. That silent trust in their husbands, in God, even when it seems like everything's going sideways. That's powerful stuff.
Wow. You know, I've never thought about Sarah's perspective like that. The weight of her silence is deafening. It does make you realize how often we just kind of gloss over the stories of women in these biblical accounts,
Yeah.
especially their emotional experiences.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that silence doesn't equal weakness. In fact, sometimes it's in those quiet moments, the moments of reflection, of prayer, that we find the strength to face the unknown, just like Sarah.
Okay, so we've got Abraham grappling with this impossible command, Isaac walking innocently into a fate he doesn't understand, the servants in the dark, and Sarah silently trusting. This is where things get really intense. It's like the whole story is holding its breath.
Oh, totally.
And you're just waiting for it all to fall apart.
Right.
And then, bam, Divine intervention. Just as Abraham's about to do the unthinkable, an angel of the Lord shows up and stops him.
I know, right? Talk about cutting it close.
Right.
And you know what gets me? That detail about it being the very last second, that's huge E, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it shows us that the test wasn't actually about Isaac being sacrificed. It was about Abraham's willingness to go through with it, even when it was just the most painful, unimaginable thing.
It's like saying, I trust you, God, even if it means like shattering my entire world.
Exactly. And that leap of faith, it leads right to God's provision. Because then we have a ram appearing, caught in the thicket, and that becomes the substitute sacrifice.
Oh, yeah, the ram.
And the timing, the imagery, it's almost like the universe itself is offering this way out.
That's true.
That's God's mercy, man.
Yeah.
That's God's faithfulness on full display.
And that image, the ram in the thicket, brings us to that idea of Jehovah Jireh.
Oh,
The Lord will provide.
yes.
It's a phrase you hear a lot.
Right.
But in this context, in this story,
Hmm.
it's just this powerful reminder that even when we're staring down the barrel of impossible, God is working things out behind the scenes.
You know what I love about you bringing up Jehovah Jireh?
Is that?
I think a lot of times we can limit it to just our material needs, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah, God provided a ram, sure, but the real provision, it was huge. I mean, Isaac's life was spared.
Right.
The covenant God made with Abraham was reaffirmed. And maybe most importantly, Abraham's faith, it deepens through this incredibly traumatic experience.
So it's not just about, God, I need this thing, please give it to me. It's about this deeper trust that God is looking out for us even when we don't see a way out.
Exactly. And that's what makes this story so interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just some ancient history lesson, you know?
Right, right.
This isn't just a theological puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
This story challenges us to look at our own WN lives and ask ourselves, what am I being called to sacrifice?
Whoa, that's a big question.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to point out that the things we're asked to sacrifice today probably look a little different than they did for Abraham.
Oh, for sure.
It's probably not going to be, an actual child.
Thankfully, you're right.
Thankfully not. But maybe it's a dream that we've been holding on to, or a relationship that's become toxic, or even a job that's comfortable, but it's just like soul crushing.
Yes, that's exactly it. Those things might seem smaller on the surface,
Yeah,
but they can be just as difficult to let go of.
totally.
They test our faith in very real, very personal ways.
It's that internal tug of war that we all feel.
Right.
It's that part of us that wants to hold on tight to what we know,
Yes.
even if it's hurting us,
Absolutely.
versus that leap of faith into the unknown.
100%. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think that's where the challenge is, the real heart of this story.
Yeah,
It's easy to talk about faith and sacrifice in theory,
right.
but it's completely different when we're the ones standing on that mountain about to let go of something precious.
Yeah, letting go. It's like we just throw that phrase around.
Right.
But then you read a story like this one and it's like, whoa.
It takes on a whole new meaning.
Right. It's scary. It's this surrender, trusting that even when it hurts, when it feels impossible, God's got something better.
And that's really where the rubber meets the road, isn't it?
Totally.
It's where our faith is put to the test, not just, theoretically,
Right.
but in those moments, those really raw, vulnerable moments, when we're asked to let go of something we never thought we could live without.
It reminds me of this quote. I heard it the other day. It said, sometimes the things we think are anchors are actually the weights that are dragging us down.
Ooh,
And I feel like that's kind of what Abraham had to confront in this moment,
yeah.
that sometimes holding on too tight, it actually prevents us from receiving the blessings that are waiting for us.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
a powerful way to put it. That brings us right back to Jehovah Jireh,
Yeah.
because it's not just about God providing in that moment of crisis.
Right.
It's about this constant, continual trust that even when we can't see it, God is already working things out for our good.
Yeah.
It's about surrendering our very, very limited vision
Right.
for the expansiveness of God's plan, which is just,
So much bigger.
uh,
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive on Abraham and Isaac, the question I really want to leave you with, and listeners, I want you to think about this too. What's your Moriah?
ooh.
What is it that you feel God might be asking you to put on the altar?
Is it a dream, a relationship, maybe even, I don't know, a belief system that you've been clinging
Oh,
to
wow. Yeah.
out of fear, out of comfort, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that might actually be holding you back from becoming who you were created to be?
It's a tough question. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it is.
But I think it's in these moments, these honest moments of reflection, when we wrestle with those hard choices,
It's true.
that we discover what faith really is, what surrender really means, and ultimately what it means to experience God's provision in our own lives.
And maybe that's the whole point of this crazy, intense, deeply moving story.
Yeah, it really is. It makes you think, that's for sure.
It does.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everybody. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions and keep trusting that God sees you, knows you, and provides.